Hello everyone, we are back with part 2 of module 15 on the urinary system. We were talking about these renal pyramids, and you see how they actually do look like pyramids, and the main point was that the inside was called the medulla and the outside was called the renal cortex. We're going to add 3 new terms to this. The first term is the renal papillae. The papillae is the tip of the renal pyramids. So you can see this pyramid, and it forms this tip here. That's the renal papillae, even if it's not, of course, mentioned on the diagram. Then you have the minor calx and the major calx. Now this is where the pyramids actually extend beyond the tip and inside the network of the actual kidney. The minor calx converges into the major calx, and the pyramids are separated by these renal columns. Now you can see this actually mentioned in this diagram, and these separate the pyramids from each other, and of course the inner and outer portions of the kidney. Now, let's continue with one of the most important ideas: how kidneys actually function on a microscopic level. This is very hard to understand. To be honest, there is a lot of stuff that even doctors do not understand. God, of course, has designed us an incredible kidney and how it works. And the subject of this is the nephron, the microscopic filtration system and the functional unit of the kidney. Now, of course, the kidney itself is what we call the kidney, but the actual filtering part is called the nephron in general. And what it does is it filters stuff out of the blood, so you can see blood entering through the arteries, going through this whole network and mess, and then eventually leaving through the renal veins. But the stuff that is filtered through this network that extends through this entire thing goes to what's called the collecting duct. And this duct collects, of course, the stuff that's filtered out, and it will transfer that through the ureters into the bladder. There's also a couple of other main portions. You have the Bowman's capsule, or the filter bed. You can see the Bowman's capsule right here. This is the entire capsule which encompasses the microscopic networks. It's not the microscopic network. That's actually called the glomerulus, which is this little network, and there are tiny cells at the end of each one of these little capillaries, and these cells just start to rip out things that the kidney thinks does not belong in the blood. And once filtered, once it runs through this entire network, it returns to the renal veins through what's called the loop of Henle, and this is the loop, and returns to the veins and keeps on going through. And hopefully after the blood has been through the glomerulus and all the other portions of the filtration system, it is hopefully free of anything that the body does not want in the blood. Now, it's not always the case, of course. If your kidneys are not functioning the way they should be, your blood is actually not getting cleaned out, and of course that means you're going to have to go on dialysis. And dialysis is set up in a hospital. It's a massive machine, and this machine takes your blood and it filters it through many filters, just like your kidney does, except you actually get your blood filtered for about 4 hours, like twice a week, instead of having your kidneys do it continually. And this is a problem because your blood is super clean. after you get done dialysis. And then over the course of the week, you get more and more gunk in your blood, and eventually you need to go back to dialysis again, and you feel more and more miserable as you progress. There you go. Now, we talked about the kidneys and the urinary system having some other functions. Aside from the main functions, the homeostatic functions that we talked about, here are some minor functions. And here's a good word for you. Juxtaglomerular cells. I looked it up. They're pretty incredible in their spelling. They're sensitive to the pH of blood and help to regulate it. Now, we talked about last chapter, in chapter 14, the lungs having some control over the pH of blood due to carbon dioxide. But so does the kidney. Kidneys do have a large function in the pH of blood. They also have a function in what's called erythropoiesis. Erythro, of course, the prefix which means red. Poiesis means to produce, or the production of the red blood cells. And you might think, well, hey, I thought the red blood cell production was controlled actually in the red bone marrow within the bones of the body, and that's true. But the kidneys can sense when the blood supply is low. Well, how can they do that? If they're not receiving blood through the renal artery, the kidneys are gonna be like, this is a problem. I'm a little low on blood to filter, so there must not be enough blood to go around, and it creates this erythropoiesis. It tells the bones, hey, you need to get on this blood cell production. General steps of kidney function, and there's 4 of them. And some textbooks combine these 2 types of reabsorption because they both are kind of the same thing. This book separates them. I actually kind of like this separation. It helps to define what is going on. And the reality is these steps are going on continually and at the same time, but this is a general process. The first step is called filtration. The blood filters to collect the plasma, and it kind of separates all the different components of blood. You like the paintbrush there? I used my MacBook's random slide generation, and it gave me all sorts of strange icons. I like it though. It makes it look a little bit less dull. Anyway, the second part is reabsorption. The molecules are moved out of the nephrons back into the blood. So what needs to go back into the blood just gets thrown back into the blood. Secretion, the stuff that's not supposed to be in the blood, is removed from the blood, placed in the urine, and sent back out. And step number 4 is water reabsorption. There's water monitoring going on during this entire process, but the kidneys determine just how much water should re-enter the system. If your system's flooded, of course it's going to send the water to the bladder. If the system is deprived of water, it's going to put the water back into the blood to raise the water content of blood. And of course, this is a reason for the color of urine. Your urine should be a clear color. Of course, most of us that don't drink enough water, here I have my water here, our urine is like a dark yellow color. Well, why is that? Because there's not a lot of water to pull out of the blood, and so the particle count relative to the amount of blood in the particle count relative to the amount of water in the urine is higher in those who don't drink a lot of water than those who drink a ton. It is more dilute in those who drink a ton of water. So typically, whether you drink a lot of water or not, there's still the same amount of like urea and other filtered junk in your urine. However, the amount of water is different, so it changes the color. and filtration rate. Let's think about a little bit of chemistry. So here is, actually, I'm going to get to that in a second. Blood pressure in your kidneys is about twice as high as in a regular capillary. In a regular capillary, the blood pressure is approximately, I think, 24 or 25 milligrams of mercury in pressure. In the kidneys capillaries, it's about 50. Well, why? It's because the blood needs to be pushed through a tiny network of vessels in order to be filtered. Now, this kind of makes sense. If you've used a coffee straw, you know how hard it is to get the water into your mouth. I used to take those little coffee straws, and I used to think they were used for actually drinking the coffee. It's just used to stir it. And the larger the vessel, the easier it is for water or blood to flow. Well, since these vessels are so tiny, it needs to really be forced through there. And if the blood pressure is not high enough, you actually go into renal shutdown, where the blood pressure drops too low and nothing is filtered. Because there is a minimum amount of blood pressure to maintain in order for filtration to happen. So if you have low blood pressure, you actually run into the possibility of your blood not getting filtered at all. And that's in addition to, of course, the fainting and all the other things that might be accompanying the low blood pressure. And so you have this term, it's called the GCP, glomerular capillary pressure, is a standard that must be maintained. And the standard actually isn't 50 milligrams of mercury. It's actually quite a bit lower than that. But in order for there to be any filtration at all, this pressure must be maintained. Your body also spends a lot of energy in your kidneys. Now, your body, of course, likes to use the least amount of energy as possible. That's why we have all sorts of passive transport gates just about everywhere, and we use these to funnel sodium and funnel potassium and funnel hydrogen and a lot of other things. But your kidneys actually use a lot of active transport. And why? You consider the fact that by the time the blood gets to the kidneys, it's polluted in a sense. Now, the reality is you could survive days with that blood. It's not like it's terrible, but it needs to be cleaned up a little bit. And so it cleans out the blood, and now you have fresh, unpolluted blood. Well, if you have here this fresh blood, and here you have this concentrated gunk that was just removed out of the blood, very naturally, your body's going to say, oh, high concentration, low concentration. Things move from high concentration to low concentration. It's going to sweep back into the blood. And that's not a good thing. And so your body has to use active transport to move it out. And it does spend a lot of energy. It spends a lot of ATP to move the substances from low concentration to high concentration instead of from high concentration to low concentration. But your body thinks it's worth it in order to clean your body out and clean your blood, of course. And we're going to talk about in the next lecture renin and angiotensin. But that's until next time. And I hope that I can see you sometime later. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll see you later.